teens. And so I think that's an important thing just to note, is that when we're talking about this, we're talking about all of those people and people who are interacting with teenagers. Did I miss anything, John?
Yeah, no, that's good enough. I think, times when we presented this, oftentimes people start with the idea that we're going to be talking about a difficult teen or talking about how to talk to parents about it. And it's kind of a caveat or whatever, that usually people will start thinking about their own experience with teens and their interactions with them. And so I think it's important to think about how to use this information, not just to help others, but also how to pay attention to it for your own work when you're working with a teen. Because it's some stuff that I think we don't necessarily think about as much. And I think it's an important piece to be paying attention to. Now, what we're going to present today is really just a piece of a bigger model.
Crystal, I work with USARA.
Good, thank you. And it comes from a guy named Scott Sells, and Scott did a lot of work and actually did his dissertation on this, but he did a lot of work and created this this model that we went around doing a ton of training with clinicians, but also worked with parents. And one of the things that I think is interesting about the piece of this model that we're presenting today is that this is a piece that can be really fun in working with parents who are about to have had it with their kids, and they've had it with their teen, and they have no idea what to do, and they will say, we have tried everything. And so this is the piece of the model that really gets at shifting an adult's thinking in how they begin to interact with teens. So do you want to?
Yep.
Go to the first slide. So like I said, this is a part of the bigger model. So you have to think that you've already established some sort of relationship, whether you're in a school or in practice, in mental health practice, or even in residential. There's some sort of established relationship with the parents. And one of the things that this piece starts out with is a little bit of psychoeducation. And so one of the things to note, and one of the things that I think is important for any adult to note, is that adolescents and adults view interactions in very different ways. And so adults are usually very outcome oriented in how they think about an interaction with an adolescent. They're looking for a result. They are wanting the rules to be followed in that interaction.
Yeah, they want a task to be completed.
Yeah.
We do that a lot as parents. It's like, we need to get the dishwasher emptied. We need to get this. We need you to pass your classes. We need you to get your homework done.
Make your bed, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Adolescents are much more process oriented in their interactions. They're much more interested, and not intentionally, this is developmentally appropriate. They're interested in controlling the mood and direction of the interaction. And they oftentimes in an interaction are trying to destabilize the adult. and the ability of the adult to enforce the rules. And so, like Jennifer said, a good example of this would be empty the dishwasher. And you say, empty the dishwasher, and your adolescent goes, I did it last time.
Were you at my house yesterday, John?
And the parent will go, I know you did it last time and I appreciate it. Now, could you do it again? Well, you never asked Sally to do it. Why can't she do it? I did it last time. Well, Sally's doing her homework right now and you were just sitting around, so I thought you could do it. Very rational, very end result, outcome oriented. But that's not fair. I could go do my homework right now if you want me to. I'm going to go do homework now. Well, but you weren't doing homework, and I need you to just empty the dishwasher. Let's not get into this. Yeah, but it's not fair. Last week when you asked me to do it, I was doing something important, and you didn't ask her then. I've done it like 3 times, and she's done it once. She's probably not even doing her homework right now. Look, I'm just empty the dishwasher. But it's not fair. It's not fair what you're asking me to do. Well, you know
I'm
what?
always the one who empties the dishwasher. No one else does.
Always, life's not fair. Now the adult has just entered into the adolescence world. And that's the invitation and that whole idea of controlling the mood of the interaction. And that's why I say, we can talk about telling parents this, which is what this model talks about. But usually when we present this, at least half of the audience is like, oh, shoot, that just happened last night, to themselves. Because this is what I love about this model, is that this is the foundation of everything else we're going to talk about today, is to understand the differences in what is trying to be achieved in an interaction between an adult and an adolescent. And by the way, one of the things to note is the adolescent is only doing what is developmentally appropriate. Adolescents live in an emotional world. That's why they're so dramatic. That's why they, act bipolar. They live in an emotional world. And so in interactions, they're always trying to invite someone. That's the connection they make, is by inviting you into an emotional interaction.
It's how they get power.
Yeah. So next slide. So understand that adolescents are more skillful at being in an emotional interaction than adults are. I've had parents, when I give that example of take out the garbage or empty the dishwasher, they'll tell me about a process that they see themselves going through, thinking back a week ago, where they went from 38 years old to 5 years old in about a minute, to the point where they were stomping their feet and cussing the kid out or calling the kid names or, pouting, whatever. They emotionally just dropped out of sight. And they were like, oh my God. And Jennifer, it's funny you giggle, because that's part of my experience when we would start presenting this to parents. We would do parent groups, and they would first identify it, and then it was almost because it was so outrageous, it was funny, because it becomes sort of this ridiculous thing once you start noticing that idea of, oh my gosh, I want it to have an outcome and I ended up being a 5-year-old pouting, and just how ludicrous it is.
But how many people have really fallen prey to this? Like how many have had their buttons pushed? You can comment in the chat box or put your little big hand up or thumbs up. Debbie's got her thumbs up, so thank you. Like it's easy to get caught up in that interaction, even as a therapist. It's easy. Somebody just said they just happened an hour ago in session.
Yeah. And absolutely, I work with teens. That's what I work with. And I have done these trainings for years and years, and I've worked with teens for years and years. And it's amazing how quickly I can get caught up if I'm not paying attention.
Yeah, it's really easy because we get into the place of like, we're just asking you a simple thing to get done. Why does it have to turn into this emotional discussion, a tantrum, stomping your feet, a complaining about everything else? It has nothing to do with it. Yeah, I mean, that dishwasher conversation, somebody's saying that it sounds like their conversations. Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
I have an 11-year-old who loves to argue about the dishwasher.
And this is the reason to do parenting groups, is because everybody's experienced this.
Oh yeah.
You're not alone. I'm not, if it's hitting home for you, trust me, you're not sitting there alone. And that's the thing, is that everyone, and so it's nice to have, parents with other parents and just like, oh God, that happens to me. One of the things that we found was really important to stress though, because we were working with teenagers that were out of control or seen as out of control, and their parents really didn't like them. By the time they get to therapy, or by the time, even with mental health counselors, school counselors, by the time, it gets so bad that parents just don't like their kids. And one of the things we really thought was important to say was that teenagers aren't inherently mean or bad or chemically imbalanced. This is in many ways developmentally appropriate, and that does not make it easy. And you don't have to say, oh, well, then it's okay, because there's still pains in the ass. Quite honestly.
But I think we can start to recognize that we don't have to take it personally.
Right.
That this is their means of communicating and interacting. It's where they come from every day. So they probably look at us like, why are you always so focused on the stupid dishwasher or the trash or making my bed or getting my homework done? Like, that's all you ever talk to me about. I want you to talk to me about emotions.
Right. Let me tell you about, oh my God, let me tell you what so-and-so said about this and that, because that's how they live.
Yeah.
Where their world is.
So they probably think of us equally as like not gaining a connection with them in that way. Like, we're so business focused.
I was watching a movie last night and thinking about this presentation. And one of the kids in the movie, a teenager, said, my parents are robots. And I started thinking, that's said several times in other movies. And I was like, that's just, it's perfect, because a kid that lives in emotion and a parent that lives in outcome based, kids will see you as a robot. Like you don't care.
And you don't know how to have fun, and you don't know, like, and really it makes adulthood look really, really, really terrible.
It does. I'm talking about it.
I know. I'm like, oh, so adulthood sucks. Got it.
So the next step that we talk about with parents is one of the ways that adolescents invite adults into this emotional world is by the skill of button pushing. And that's not a new word by any means, but one of the things that we will do is we hand them a list. And if you want to go to the next slide, it's actually the next two slides, but we'll hand them a list with the top 10 ways that we've heard adolescents push an adult's buttons. And what we'll do is we do like a parent group for this. And y'all can do it in many different ways, but this is the most fun parent group you'll ever do. Is what we will do is we put buttons, different sizes, and we just spread them out on a table. And we give them a list. You say, these are things
Excuse me, making one from inside.
that push a parent's buttons. You know, you're not.
And you will get a copy of this PowerPoint. So you don't have to frantically be writing this all down.
And as facilitators of the group, we'll say, okay, and we'll ask, is there one on this list, does any of these stick out that your adolescent does? And we inevitably will have a parent say, my kid all the time says, you never let me do anything. It drives me nuts. And one of the next thing we'll do is say, so when you hear that, where do you feel it? Where do you experience that? And they'll say, well, it makes me mad. And say, okay, it makes you mad. Does it make you mad because it like drives you crazy, like in your head? Or do you want to punch them, or you want to kick them, or where's it at? I want to punch them. Is this a big trigger for you? No, it's a medium size. And so, okay. And we'll give them one of these buttons, and we have tape, and we'll have them tape it to their hand. We'll have them tape it right there to their hand. So it's like, you're not my real father. Where's that? Well, that hurts my heart when they say that. Big button, little, big button. All right, have them tape it to their heart. So they tape it to their heart. And we do that a couple of times, and then we put them in smaller groups, and we have them talk about whether it's these, or we also say, what are some of the things your kid says that just knocks you out? And it's like, oh, when they go, whatever, or when they just make a noise, and you get a lot of, and so they start recognizing them, and you put them in small groups and say, and when you come up with one, think about where it hits you, think about how big the button is, and tape it to you. And we do that for about 10 minutes, and then we have them stop. And we have them look around. And you have all of these adults with buttons all over them, taped everywhere. All as many, it looks like a suit of armor of buttons. And we say, now look how vulnerable you are. And it's an experiential way of getting an idea of, I am vulnerable to being invited into these emotional interactions. So you want to just,
I was going to say, I want to show the next.
Yeah,
I want people to just list the number that pushes their button.
Or if there's something that you have,
or something new, yeah.
An adolescent say in session, or if you have your own kid and something that you think of that you go, oh, that's their go-to, that really gets me into an emotional exchange with them.
Well, and I think the other thing to note is when you have kids of varying ages, the younger one always learns from the olders, and so they get that even earlier. So now you have a 5-year-old who's like, you never ask anybody else to do it. You always are asking me to do it. And you're like, you're 5, like, stop. But they're seeing how their older siblings get that button pushed for you as well. And so they've watched it. And so now you suddenly have this whole range of kids that are doing this to you.
Yeah. And by the
And
way, remember, button pushing is designed to get the adult off of the topic,
Yeah.
to move them away from what is being asked. Because remember, adults typically are starting an interaction with a result or an outcome oriented task.
Yeah. Benson, I can pick on him because I know Benson well. He wrote in the chat, why did you allow blank to do that then? Like, why did you allow so-and-so to do
Yeah.
that if I can't do that?
Yes.
That's a really good one.
So if you remember, let's take Benson for a minute. If you remember back to, I think it was our last presentation on themes of engagement for adolescents. One of the themes of engagement was fairness.
Yep.
And so Benson, that's right. That is a request that is pushing toward fairness. And fairness is an emotional state for adolescents. And it is an emotional piece that we have to pay attention to. And remember, as soon as an adult says, well, life's not fair, now you're no longer getting the trash taken out.
Yeah.
Because you're about to go into a whole story about how life's not fair.
You were
And-
going to lecture
Yes.
about
And
somebody else said, their kid says, I'm just going to drop out because I don't care.
yeah,
Oh, you can't drop out. What's good? If you drop out, then
right.
this and this, you know? Yeah, that's a good one too. Somebody said add being ignored or giving the silent treatment. as well.
Absolutely. and being ignored is, again, a total invitation to tap into your emotional place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the pouting, the ignoring, the pretending they haven't heard anything, just giving you a dirty look when you ask them to do something.
And by the way, there's one that's not on here, and it's actually part of another part of this model. We used to talk about adolescents have literal disease. So they will take what you say and take it to its literal place. And I think I spoke about this, I forget where, but I think I saw in the chat somebody said being home at 11. And I had an adolescent that was home by 11, but they were in the front yard having a party with their friends. And the parents got pissed at them, and they were like, we're home at 11. And so, and then, you know, it was, all right, I want you in the house, but that's not fair. You said I just had to be home at 11. And again, now that's not fair. Look, you knew what I meant. And once you start saying those things, now you are on the topic of, oh, what is real and what isn't, and what you meant and what you didn't mean, as opposed to getting in the house.
Yeah.
And remember, when adolescents, and they're not intentionally doing this, this is where they live, that creates connections for them. That's their connection, is those emotional interactions. So the next couple of slides are just reminders from our last
These are the themes, the adolescents' themes of engagement. This is where they live and they come from, and they want that independence.
So leave me alone is independence. They don't say, hey, I desire independence. They say, leave me the F alone. Now, leave me the F alone typically will get an adult into their emotional state. So this is where the two things that we've talked about, the thing we talked about last time and this time connect, is that those themes of engagement for adolescents are based on developmentally appropriate emotional bids.
Yeah.
Let me do it by myself. Well, I don't trust that you can do it. Oh, you don't trust me? And so see, Jennifer, see, I told you. And now it's like, oh, well, and then, everything is, I'm deflecting away from what you are trying to get me to do.
Yeah, and you'll find yourself, you're sending them to their room and you're unloading the dishwasher, taking out the trash, or fixing them a sandwich because you feel bad that they've told you there's no food in the house ever.
Right.
Let me show you. Look at all the food that's in the house. Here, let's make you a sandwich. Let's do this. It's how they invite you into those interactions. And really, if we can see it as that's their bid for the connection, that's really how they're wanting you to show them that they care, that you care about them.
So it all goes back to that first slide about remembering and helping whatever adult you're working with, helping them to remember that you and the adolescent are coming from different places, and neither one of them are the devil. They are just developmentally are coming from different places, and those interactions don't necessarily fit together. And what we're going to do here in a minute is talk about some of the strategies that you can give an adult to not enter into these interactions. So that's where this is going, but
yeah,
we're getting there.
Yeah, but these are those reminders of those adolescent themes of engagement. So these independence, this maturity, self-control, self-respect.
Desire for justice is fairness, and
Yeah.
so, you never asked so-and-so to do this. I did it last time. Those are that, again, your adolescent isn't going to say, I desire fairness. They're going to say it in ways that it will typically push an adult's buttons, or typically get an adult into a place where they begin to push the adolescent's buttons. And that's the next step here. Is we've talked about how the adolescents push adults' buttons, but now we talk to parents about, and by the way, you push your kids' buttons too, because we want to put this on a bit of an even playing field. And so, Jennifer, you did the perfect example of, now you're going into a lecture.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, they say, I'm going to run away. I'm just going to drop out of school. And they come up with these things that it's like, it's a bid. It really is. It's like this invitation to be like, oh, okay. Well, then I'm thinking I have to start rationally dealing with you on this level when they're in this emotional place.
Right.
So then you have to explain, well, if you don't graduate from high school, then do you know what's going to happen next? What's going to happen is that you're never going to get a job. They don't even hire you at McDonald's without your high school diploma. Like, they require, you have to get it. It's going to be really, and all of that is true and valid. But is that what they're really wanting to, like, is that going to get them to change their mind?
So one of the things for me, when I first started working with adolescents, and they don't just do this to parents, they'll try to invite anyone in. One of the things I had to pay attention to was these first two, and the whole idea of preaching and the whole idea of talking in chapters. And I had to realize that once I've said one sentence, I need it to shut up. And so I better make that one sentence important. Because if I begin to talk in chapters, then the adolescent is done. Because usually if I'm talking in chapters, I'm doing exactly what you're talking about, Jennifer. I'm trying to rationally convince them of something or educate them about something.
Yeah, because they just don't know. We're looking at them like they just don't know what's gonna happen.
Right. And that they're idiots, which is disrespect. And remember, one of the themes of engagement is respect. And so
Yeah.
if I'm disrespecting, I'm pushing their buttons, which puts them even more in an emotional state.
Right. So it's sitting and saying, well, I want to understand, why do you want to drop out then? Like, it's very similar to what we talked about when we did that suicide training as well, a couple of times ago. It's like, instead of trying to talk somebody out of suicide, we're saying, let's sit down and understand why you're feeling so much discomfort or pain.
Yeah.
So this is the same thing. It's, why do you want to drop out?
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel being the kid that, is home the most, and so you get asked to take out the trash the most? What is this what's really happening here?
And one thing way down the road in this model is the idea of love and limits. And even once you have the adult understanding that they're getting pulled into emotional interactions and how to stay out of those, down the road we talk about how do you intentionally enter into a connected emotional exchange. And so when your kid says, I'm dropping out, can you say, and for counselors, this may be a little bit more of a natural thing, but can you say, it sounds like you're really struggling right now?
That comes across totally different. That allows them to share that emotional place where they're at,
Right.
and invites them to do that at a more mature level than becoming a 5-year-old with them.
Instead of saying, no, you're not dropping out, or saying, if you drop out, you're never going to be able to have a good job, and you're not going to be able to live in a house like this. And just think, if somebody did that to you, it would feel invalidating and it would push your buttons. And so then we ask the parents, which ones are you good at? Which ones you do? So we're having parents take some responsibility for the interactions they've been in with their kids. And we even will ask them, are there others that you think that you may have noticed your kid just reacts to? And what's interesting is some of the button pushing things that their kids do, they do too.
Mhm.
Ignore my kid. Oh, you're going to ignore me? And then they just go back and forth. You're going to ignore me? You're going to ignore me? And by the way, when we're presenting this, we try to have a little bit of lightness to it, because there is some absurdity to all of this.
Well, I mean, because really, when we look at it as parents, as therapists, as guidance counselors, as teachers, in all of these different roles, when we're working with adolescents, we're trying to help. We're trying to get them to become successful adults. And so our motivation, behind that is, I really want them to be successful. I want them to not have to struggle through the difficulties that maybe I had to struggle with. I want their lives to be a little bit easier. I want all of those things. And so it increases our anxiety to the level of, we feel like we have to do something. And so then we go into this place and not even realizing it. And so, yeah, we do. We get into absurd places. And we can even watch ourselves do it. Like I've watched myself interact, and going, stop, don't do that anymore. No, don't do that. And then it still comes out. It's like watching yourself just
Yeah.
be
and-
absurd.
And one of the things we learned was that knowing this information was helpful, but it didn't necessarily stop the adult. It didn't necessarily create all of the change that needed to happen. And so one of the things we would do is we'd practice with adults, and we knew their adolescence also. We now knew their buttons, because they've just told us their buttons. And so we would role play their adolescent and have them do interactions, and we'd try to push their buttons. And we would try to keep them to a script of what we're going to be talking about here in a minute. And it was hilarious how easily we could push the buttons of these folks that now knew all this information, knew that we were going to push their buttons, and we still could do it. And so we did a number of role plays just to try to keep them in that space where we were trying to move them toward. So you want to go to the next. So here's some strategies that we then would provide. And there was, some of these are basic conflict, avoiding conflict kind of stuff. One of the ones, if I can find it. Yeah. One of my favorite ones that we were in a discussion, and we thought of this, the using deflectors, and it was we were giggling about it as we were talking about it, but the whole idea of using words like nevertheless, be that as it may, regardless, as a word to use to give yourself a moment to, in some ways, it's a statement of, I hear what you're saying, but it also allows you to redirect the conversation back to whatever you want it to be, results or whatever. So, empty the dishwasher. I did it last time. I know you did. Can you empty it again? Yeah, but I did it last time. I've done it the last 3 times. That's not fair. Nevertheless, I need you to empty the garbage, I need you to empty the dishwasher. That's not fair.
Nevertheless.
Be that as it may, or nevertheless. And we have parents that would come back, or adolescents that will come back and say, I hate the word nevertheless. I hate that word. But it's a great strategy. I've had a ton of parents that use this, and they're like, it is amazing how well it works. It doesn't work every time, but what it does is it doesn't just change the adolescent, it changes the entire interaction. And it gives the adult a chance to remind themselves, don't enter into this emotional exchange. Just gives them a word. So we offer them these, and we take them through. This is a kind of a long-term, well, not long-term model, but I mean, this takes a little bit to get this information to parents. And we talk about each one of them and we have them choose which ones make the most sense for you.
Yeah, because I think you have to pick things that you're going to actually do. And you have to identify a strategy ahead of time, because the dances that we're in already, I mean, you can get into that same dance every week with a client that walks in your door who says, I'm not going to do any of my effing homework, and I'm not going to blah, 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 and I'm not doing this and that. And it's okay. Nevertheless, we're going to be talking about some other things today. So let's put the homework on the shelf. Whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know, we know those dances, we have to like choreograph new moves in the dances.
Absolutely. And so as a counselor, for me, two of the biggest ones I feel like I need to pay attention to is staying short, that number two, the second one, staying short and to the point, because remember, and Jennifer knows this, I love talking, and so I can talk in chapters. And if I'm caught up in the emotion, I can really talk in chapters. The other one is a basic counseling skill, staying in the present, which is farther down. And that one is using the here and now, using in counseling terminology, it's using immediacy. And so when an adolescent in session says, you know, you're just a or whatever, or, you know, or I'm not going to do that or whatever, I will typically say, what's happening for you right now? That's staying in the present.
Yeah.
Instead of me trying to talk them into it, or saying it, or even saying it's okay if you don't do it, because maybe it's not okay. But it's for me, how do I connect with them in that present moment? What's happening for you right now? What came up for you?
Why do you feel so strongly that you need to make sure that everyone knows you're not doing the effing homework?
Yeah.
What is it about that homework that is so challenging for you? What is going on here? I think for me, John, it's that separating misbehavior from personal attacks that I see so much. It's easy to get hurt and to have our feelings hurt because we're like, we do so much. We make so many sacrifices as parents, and even as I think as therapists, you know, or as guidance counselors or school counselors, teachers, but like, this is a hard job. This is really hard. And we've made a lot of sacrifices in our lives to join this career, to get to this point, and to have somebody sit in a session when like you're going, I could be doing any number of other things, but I'm dedicating my time to be sitting here with you, and they're just attacking you verbally.
You know, Jennifer, even I don't know if I've said this lately, but I know I've said, look, I'm on your side. And that gets to that thing of, hey, I'm here for you, and you're acting like this to me. That's not, and getting all personal about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, what is it? What's really happening for them? Is it about the person they're talking to? Probably not. It really
Yeah.
has nothing to do with it. It is that they feel like they're not being respected, or they're not being heard, or it's unfair, they're being picked on, or maybe that something else has gone on earlier in the day that we're not aware of. And so they're lashing out, or they don't trust, or they're scared because you're saying that you're there to help them. And they're like, why would you be? I'm going to lash out at you. So it's figuring out how to separate that misbehavior from the person, and knowing that the behavior isn't the person. They aren't their behavior.
So
But
I
I
think,
think that's a hard thing to do.
yeah. One last thing I want to talk about is just the next slide. I know there's a couple more after that, but it kind of goes along with the next one. And and so it's the potential stumbling blocks for parents or for adults. But this is in some ways for parents. One of the things we did not want the parent to do once we've role played, had them try to stay out of these emotional exchanges, because, you know, an adolescent isn't necessarily going to cooperate and say, oh, you're staying out of an emotional exchange, so I'm just going to now cooperate. Still going to bid for you to not be in that place. And so one of the things we did not want parents to do was have to think on the fly. We wanted everything to be in place, because if things aren't in place to where you couldn't almost robotically do it, like a consequence, and you had to come up with a consequence, you're coming up with a consequence in an emotional state. And you're having to think it up. And so we would, one of the next steps is to have parents agree, if there's two parents, have them agree to the top 3 rules they want it to enforce. Not all the rules, just the top 3. So making it manageable. And by the way, we talked about this before, but there were times where when you ask parents to come up with the top 3 rules, that's when marital counseling begins. Because they don't agree. And when they don't agree on what they're going to enforce and what the consequence will be, that becomes confusing to the adolescent, and that potentially is part of the problem. So as a counselor, I've been at that point where I've said, come up with the top 3, and watched this couple fight about things and not come up with it, and not be able to talk about not coming up with it. And that's when I say, it looks like we have some work to do.
Well, and I've seen a lot of parents who come up with so many detailed rules.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, one of those things is not too many rules, because it's so easy to say, okay, you will be home at this time and this, and if you don't, then this will happen and this will happen. And then it's really like the whole justice system, you know, all the rules and sentencing guidelines for judges, it's all in this whole document, and the kid's like, so I can't do anything.
Right.
So I'm not listening to any of this.
Yeah, and that's what usually happens when you have 1,000,000 rules, then you have 0 rules.
Yeah.
And so that's why we say the top 3, and they say, well, but we want them to behave in so many ways. And it's like, let's try to get them to behave in one way first.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
that's
yeah.
really the bid is, you know, let's practice with 1 or 2 before trying to enforce 70.
Well, and you can look at things like, the goal is that we're going to be safe. So we're going to make safe decisions.
Yeah.
And have it as a general guideline of safety, and maybe it's respect or open communication, and you're talking those few things out.
You know, and I know that we're getting closer to time, and I know I would love to hear from people, Jennifer, instead of
Yep.
just
Same.
yammering on, but wanted to kind of barrel through this is a bunch of stuff, y'all. And by the way, this is just a little bit of, but the rest of the PowerPoint is some guidelines on having a parent adolescent contract. And then some of the points of entry, why teenagers are having problems, and how to enter in with teenagers in talking with them about the problems that they're having. But
And then there's a reference at the very end as well for this book, for Scott Sell's book.
it's like that. Mine's signed though, so y'all can just. I said, Scott, sign it. You wrote half this book. It's like, no, you didn't. Any thoughts, any reactions that anybody wants to share?
Yeah, we have several minutes where we can have people bring up things or comment in the chat. You don't want to speak out.
I think it's important that the entire foundation, once you start thinking about this, that entire foundation of understanding that adolescents are living in an emotionally driven world, and that they engage in interactions and connections from an emotional state. Look at their best friends and look at how they interact with them. And so they connect with adults in the very same way. And when adults are not paying attention to that and just trying to get results, they're one, at risk of unintentionally being pulled into an emotional interaction where there's conflict. But the other is they may be missing opportunities to connect.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, is it's those missed opportunities that happen. Even like John and Julie Gottman talk about those bids for connection in a marriage relationship. And I think it's the bids for connections in the parent-child relationship as well. And we miss them on a regular basis.
Yeah. And if we're talking about working with others, by the time they get to us, they're angry. I mean, they're angry and they see their kid as the devil. Oftentimes.
Yeah. And then they don't like them.
Yeah, and they don't like them. So they don't want that. When you think of love and limits, they don't want the love part. They just want they've moved totally into the limits. And so they become guards in a prison and trying to just shut the kid down. And that's, and I'm not blaming the parents. That's the kid's just as much a part of that place. But it's really beginning to try to soften some of that. And part of it is that whole idea of, in many ways, your kid is developmentally acting the way that they're going to act. And it's kind of an appropriate place. It's not a fun place. And we talk about, it doesn't excuse them being horses patoots. It doesn't excuse them from a number of things. And, think of how connected they get to their friends doing the exact same thing they do with you.
Yeah. Well, and I think their actions don't excuse us to have bad actions either.
Correct.
They don't justify it. I'm noticing we're getting some good comments, and Michael did put the code word in.
Is it teen 222? Is that what?
Teen 222 is the code word, and you put a link here. What?
I'm glad he didn't do teen 666.
Yes. I had to go for 222 because it's 222 of 22.
Way better.
And Michael, is this the link? Is that the evaluation Google link?
The link is the evaluation form. So if you're looking for CE credits, or even if you just want to give us comments, and I do ask for future ideas for classes, But yes, if you'll go and fill out the Google form and put the code word in, I will send a certificate out. Please give me a couple of days to send the certificates out. Everybody kind of fills that evaluation in at different times. So sometimes it takes me a couple of days to let everybody get those in, and I'll get those out to you. I'll also send a copy of the presentation, the slides, with the certificates. And yes, we have been recording this, and I will send a link to all of the recordings that we've done, all the CE classes that we've done, and you can rewatch them and look at those again. So
And then somebody's asking if they need to share their email to receive the PowerPoint. They got it through another therapist on their team.
and she got off. Yeah, Brittany, if you would have just gone in, just do that evaluation. I'll get your email and send you those links. So
I'm trying to be good with time. That's why I just saw things
I
back.
know you were good.
Yeah. I could talk about this for a long time because it really does. I mean, it's relevant, and I think every adult experiences this.
Yeah.
Leisha's in, so great.
She's been
So-
in the whole time.
Oh,
Hi, Heather. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say thank you because that was great for me personally and professionally. And I'm trying to think, I feel like they should couple these parenting courses with immunizations for children. That when the kids go in at the different intervals, then we have to attend this course because it's so helpful to everyone.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the best trainings are ones that the trainers have lived through it and experienced it, because and I think there's just something to be said for it, because we're all in that boat. And it makes me feel old when I talk about that. It's like, I want to be in an emotional state.
Joyce, if you will email me, I will get you the link for the class.
And thank you, Heather, by the way. So
Yeah.
I think Jennifer and I stay on for a few minutes afterward, just to take any questions that people may have lingering. But Michael, are they kind
Yes, we know some people have to get off for meetings and stuff. So, but if you have a question, we can definitely stay here for a minute and talk some more. Or if you want to listen in, but yeah, if you need to get off, we understand that. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
There's nothing like, after doing the parenting group with the button pushing, there's nothing like seeing all these adults with this paper just all over them. And it's such an experiential place to be, to just
Right.
look, and it's a supportive thing too, because everybody has a ton of buttons. Nobody doesn't.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, and you can do that in so many different relationships as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Jennifer, you push my buttons left and right. I mean,
I
I
know.
voted with them.
I do it on
Brooke.
purpose.
Brooke, I saw your comment. No, you're good. You'll actually, it's kind of funny watching the evaluations. Some of the answers on the code word come out quite interesting, but no, Brooke, you're good. We also take an attendance record. So I've got that. And if you did the evaluation, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
No questions, comments? concerns?
Seems like everybody's good.
Interesting stories to entertain the remainder of us on here?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best part.
Well, that's what's funny is the comments were like, hey, that happened at my house last week. Hey, that was last night. Hey,
You're
that was
talking about-
yesterday.
You're talking about every daily conversation at my house.
Uh-huh. Well, it's like my 11-year-old has watched her sisters do this.
Yes.
So she's been doing it since she was like 6.
Yeah, she's been trained well.
Oh,
So I have a question.
yeah.
I'm
Sure.
trying to click on the link and it's telling me to update my browser.
Your firewall may be blocking you. If you copy it, a lot of times for me, because my company tries to make it open in Explorer, if I just copy that link and then open it in Mozilla or what's the whatever it is.
Firefox, yeah.
Then it will work. But a lot of times it may be, or if you're on a laptop or if you're on a phone, you may need to do it on the other to make it work. But if it doesn't work, just email me and I can send it to you again. And you can try on a different computer. Will that work?
Yeah, I'll try to copy it and use a different browser. Is there a password also that we need?
No, that's just a Google form. So
Okay, perfect.
yeah, that's where, like you said, a lot of companies, their firewall blocks that those Google pages. So
Michael, I'm going to email you this PowerPoint in PDF right now so that it
perfect,
gets a little smaller.
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
Send it in that other one that crashes people's systems.
By the way, at this point, Scott's doing